Hello, welcome to today's lesson. Today you will learn about CHAMPS. So, the aim is to learn about the ways that you can use CHAMPS to behave properly in class or in the lab. The aim is the learning goal and it tells you the topic that you must focus on. You must ask yourself, am I understanding the message from this lesson? At the end of the lesson, you must ask yourself, have I reached the learning goal from this lesson? If you find that you cannot say yes or that you are confused, you must raise your hand immediately so I can then help you to understand the lesson and or clarify any confusion that you may have. Here's a do now activity. Write answers for the following questions and assignments. You can use your journal or notebook entries to help you with this do now activity. Work individually or by yourself on this activity. Remember to pause this video whenever you need more time before moving on. What was the previous lesson about? What did you learn from the previous lesson? What was something new to you? What did you realize from the previous lesson? Did you think that something was different from your previous understanding? What did you figure out from the previous lesson? Did you have to find a solution to a problem or an answer for a question? Define and give examples of rules and laws and why they are important. Explain the purpose of rules and laws in the school and community. Now it's time to share with a student sitting next to me. You can pause the video now. Here are my answers for the do now questions. The previous lesson was about writing introductions and following classroom expectations. I learned from the previous lesson that being polite is a classroom expectation of being kind or respectful. I realized from the previous lesson that writing details about myself can help me to write an introduction paragraph. I figured out from the previous lesson that writing notes or making entries in my journal can help me to find information that I may forget. And here are my answers for the do now assignments. Rules and laws are given or established instructions or policies for doing something, performing an action or actions, etc., properly or that is required, such as being required to raise my hand to get my teacher's attention, or not stealing something, or not drawing graffiti on school property. Rules and laws are important because they keep people safer and keep order or proper procedures in our lives. The purpose of rules and laws in the school and community are the same as for the reason rules and laws are important. They keep people safer and keep order or proper procedures in our lives. We will be in a laboratory, workbench, or shop environment during this class. There is a high risk of injury in these types of settings. The ways to avoid the risk of injury and to be safe are by properly using instruments, equipment, tools, and materials. For example, properly using calculators, goggles, pencils, and paper, and knowing and obeying rules. But some rules and/or activities can change during a class. For example, being allowed to stand and speak during a team or lab activity. There is usually an intended sequence of events during class, and rules can change with a new event. Here's the intended sequence of events during class. At the start of class, students first place their book bags in the designated area, then they retrieve their pencils and journals. If a student doesn't have a journal or notebook, he or she can use a sheet of paper from the supply area. If a student borrows an item from the supply area, he or she must fill in a section of a materials sign-out form so I can keep track of class material. Students can also use the electric pencil sharpener at this time to sharpen their pencils. Then students sit in their seats, ready for instructions from me. I will then describe the do now or bell ringer activity to students. Then I will take the attendance while students individually work on the activity. Each student will share his or her work with a student sitting next to him or her. I usually inform students about which direction they should turn to speak to their classmates, left, right, front, or back. Next, I will use a deck of shuffled index cards with students' names to randomly select students to share their work with the class. After that, I will quickly and concisely review the previous lesson. I will then begin to teach the next lesson by introducing new knowledge or the next topic. Students are required to write about their learning of new knowledge, learning experiences, realizations, and solutions from this class. Next, I will perform a demonstration of the new knowledge or current topic for the class. Next, students will work in teams on the lab activity. I will check students' work at this time. We will then conduct a questions and comment session about the lab activity. After this, students will share their journal or notebook entries. I will then review, summarize, and conclude today's class. Students will then adhere or glue their handouts and/or note papers to their journals. Students will then clean and organize their class or lab area and turn in work. I will initial the date at the end of students' journal entries so I can keep track of students' work. Students will then return their journals or note sheets to the designated areas and return borrowed items so I can check off the materials sign-out form. Now, students will retrieve their book bags before leaving class. This is a table that separates students' and teachers' tasks during each event. The students' tasks are on the left side of the table and the teachers' tasks are on the right side. The students' tasks are also highlighted in yellow and the teachers' tasks are highlighted in green. Tasks that are the same for the students and teacher are highlighted in blue. Here are examples of rule and/or activity changes during class. Can students have conversations? If yes, how loud? How can a student get help? Can a student ask another student or only the teacher? Should the student raise his or her hand or write a note asking for help? Should the student give the note to the teacher or put it on the teacher's desk? What type of activity is required? Is it individual work, teamwork, desk work, lab or project work, a performance exercise, or a test or exam? What type of movement is permitted? Can a student sit, stand, walk, go to the restroom, or get a drink of water, use the electric pencil sharpener, submit work, or pick up material? Required and/or expected behaviors can also be a goal during class. Here are examples of required and/or expected behaviors during class. Participation, worked on tasks, completed tasks, focused on lesson, solved problems, inquired or researched, was creative. Success, helped learning, improved learning, cooperated, helped others, was friendly or kind, received praises or rewards. So, how can I easily know the correct rules that I must follow and the behaviors to demonstrate? By using CHAMPS. CHAMPS is an acronym which is a word made from the first letter of other words. These words were from the rules and behaviors that were described previously, such as conversation, help, activity, movement, participation, and success. The rules and behavior goals were organized and arranged in a table chart. Here's an example of a CHAMPS chart, which uses colored tabs. Red indicates no or not permitted. Yellow indicates yes or is permitted. Where and what would the colored tabs be in the CHAMPS chart if conversation were permitted and at level 2, help were permitted from other students, from teacher by raising hand and or by writing notes for teacher to pick up, activity were permitted for individual work, teamwork, desk work, and lab or project work, and movement were only permitted to sit, to stand, and or to walk. Which of these blank tabs would be red and which would be yellow? Now it's time to pause the video and share with a student sitting next to me. This chart shows the colors that the tabs should be. Here's an example of a CHAMPS chart in the classroom. What did you learn, realize, and figure out from today's lesson? If it's your turn to share with the entire class, you can speak at level 4. Now it's time for review, summary, and conclusion of today's lesson. What are rules and laws and why are they important? Rules and laws are given or established instructions or policies for doing something, performing an action, etc., properly, or that is required, such as being required to raise my hand to get my teacher's attention, or not stealing something, or not drawing graffiti on school property. Rules and laws are important because they keep people safer and keep order or proper procedures in our lives. We will be in a laboratory, workbench, or shop environment during this class. There is a high risk of injury in these types of settings. The ways to avoid the risk of injury and to be safe are by properly using instruments, equipment, tools, and materials. For example, properly using calculators, goggles, pencils, and paper, and knowing and obeying rules. But some rules and/or activities can change during a class. For example, being allowed to stand and speak during a team or lab activity. So, how can I easily know the correct rules that I must follow? By using CHAMPS. What does this CHAMPS chart indicate? It indicates that there is no conversation. Students can only get help from the teacher. Students are only permitted to perform individual work, and students must remain seated. In the next lesson, you will learn about using your notebook or journal. Remember that you will need a notebook or journal for this class. Thank you for being here today. I welcome you to the next class.